I have a twin sister, Michelle, and our parents always liked her more than me. I used to think that's just how families are supposed to be. A close family is a wonderful thing, something to treasure. But I can only say that if my own family cherishes me. Some people who get lots of love from their families might think this way, but it's different for me. I can't remember ever feeling loved by my family. My name is Harper and I'm 30 years old, still not married. From where I stand, my family might seem close, but I rarely felt happy with them. Michelle was always beautiful and smart. Our parents showered her with love, but I was plain and ordinary, so they mostly ignored me or treated me like a bother. When Michelle wanted to learn ballet, our parents spared no expense, praising her and dressing her up for performances. But when I wanted to learn swimming or art, they said no, calling it a waste on someone like me. I remember feeling so sad and empty watching my family celebrate Michelle's ballet victories without me. But despite all the money they spent on her ballet, Michelle suddenly quit when she started high school, and our parents didn't object. When it was time for college, our parents favored Michelle again. She wanted to go to a private women's college in the city, and they promised to cover all her expenses without her needing scholarships or a job. They were cheerful about it as always. However, when it came to my education, my aspirations were never considered. My parents thought graduating from high school was enough for me. Whenever I talked about going to college, they'd say, "We let you finish high school, be thankful for that, and get a job after graduation." But I kept pushing them, offering to pay my own way through college and help at home. Finally, they agreed to let me attend a local public university, but I had to manage my studies alongside part-time work and house chores. Because I had student loans to cover personal expenses, I couldn't afford to miss classes or work. If I neglected housework, they'd threaten to make me quit college. My life was a non-stop juggling act. Meanwhile, my sister would occasionally come home looking fashionable and enjoying her college life. She'd make fun of my appearance, saying things like, "You always look so plain. If I looked like you, I'd be too embarrassed to leave the house." She'd also question the value of my education, implying it was a waste of time. She'd say, "Going to a place like that, does it even make sense?" Hearing her remarks hurt, especially because our neighbors praised her beauty, which made our parents proud. I used to feel deeply wounded by these thoughtless comments when I was younger. Now I'm so used to it that I hardly feel anything anymore. Despite enduring such unfair treatment, the stormy 2 years of college went by, and both my sister and I graduated. For my sister's graduation, the rest of the family went on an overseas trip and splurged on designer bags. These celebrations had nothing to do with me. I wanted to live and work on my own, but my parents insisted I stay home, do housework, and give them my salary. Luckily, I got a job offer from a company that I could commute to by car, even though it was quite far. Meanwhile, my sister started working for a famous company in New York and loved bragging about her office in Manhattan. I didn't care much about her boasting. A few years later, she got married to a colleague and quit her job. She had a wedding ceremony, but of course, I wasn't invited. At the wedding, Tom, her colleague, made rude comments about me, saying I looked plain compared to my sister. My sister just laughed and didn't stop him. Later, when my sister had children, everyone was relieved that they all looked like her, with cute faces. I was ignored and felt out of place. A few years after that, my mother suddenly passed away. She was reclusive and relied on me for everything at home, so her sedentary lifestyle might have contributed to her death. While my father and sister grieved deeply, I found myself strangely emotionless. They criticized me for not crying and even threw things at me, which finally made me cry. After my mother's death, my father's health declined, and I had to take care of him while managing work and chores. My sister would occasionally visit, but I felt disconnected from my family. My sister would mostly just ask our father for money for her kids and then leave without helping at all. From my father's perspective, he rarely thanked me and always found fault in what I did, complaining about the bath water being too hot or the seasoning being too light when I cooked. Eventually, he blamed me for my mother's death and threw things at me. Despite my father's age and weakened legs, he would use the money I earned to go out drinking with friends. When he ran out of money, he'd demand more from me, claiming his legs hurt and avoiding any tasks at home. But he'd suddenly become energetic when going out for drinks. Looking back, I realize I should have left such a selfish family home long ago. But after enduring unreasonable treatment and verbal abuse from my family since childhood, I thought it was normal. I became numb to the abnormality and never considered moving out and living on my own. Then one day, I received an unexpected call from my sister. Before I could even say hello, she started yelling at me, asking how long I planned to squat in our family home. She announced that she had decided to come live with Dad. My sister suddenly called me and demanded that I move out immediately. She accused me of lingering at home to live comfortably off our mother's inheritance. This accusation troubled me because I didn't know about any inheritance. I decided to ask my father about it. When I confronted my father, he looked at me disdainfully and confirmed that he was indeed planning to live with my sister. He said he couldn't tolerate living with someone like me who couldn't do housework properly or get the bathwater temperature right. He praised my sister for offering to take care of him and surround him with his cute grandchildren. He criticized me for underperforming since childhood, not getting married, and spending money at home. He declared that he was cutting ties with me and told me to go somewhere else. I was deeply hurt by my father's harsh words, questioning if I was really just someone who spent the family's money. Despite my doubts, I finally made up my mind. Since both my father and sister wanted me to leave and sever our family ties, I decided there was no point in hesitating anymore. I resolved to move out and take a new step forward. I contacted my sister and informed her that I was moving out because Dad also wanted to live with her and was cutting ties with me. I apologized for everything and asked if I could take my belongings with me. My sister responded callously, implying that my belongings were cheap and would be in the way. She warned me not to touch anything else in the house or the money, threatening to call the police if I did. After our conversation, I focused on packing my things for the move. A few days later, buried in a pile of cardboard boxes in my new place, my phone rang loudly. It was my sister yelling at me, asking angrily what was going on. Confused and taken aback, I held the phone away from my ear to protect myself from her piercing voice. I could still hear my sister loud and clear despite holding the phone away from my ear. She demanded to know where I had taken all the furniture and appliances from the house. I calmly explained that I had taken everything that belonged to me, items I had bought with my own money from my job. But my sister refused to believe me. She accused me of using our mother's inheritance to buy expensive items after her death. I sighed, realizing she had misunderstood everything. I patiently explained that our mother didn't have any inheritance to leave behind. She was just a regular housewife, and there was no way she could have left the amount my sister imagined. My sister, still confused, angrily insisted that all the furniture and appliances were replaced with new ones after our mother passed away and accused me of using our mother's supposed inheritance. I reiterated that I had purchased everything with my own salary to save time and manage the housework after our mother's death. Despite my explanations, my sister continued to believe otherwise, unable to accept the reality. As I tried to explain calmly, my sister remained unconvinced. She questioned me about the car that had been at our house for a long time, assuming it belonged to our family. I clarified that the car was actually in my name and had been for a while. My sister refused to believe me and accused me of lying. She expressed frustration, revealing that she had quit her job and used up all her savings, believing that we could live comfortably off our mother's supposed inheritance. Now feeling stranded without transportation, she blamed me for her predicament. I was overwhelmed by my sister's selfishness and tried to reason with her, explaining that there was no inheritance and that she had misunderstood everything. However, she seemed fixated on the idea of living luxuriously off our mother's non-existent inheritance. Despite her ongoing rant, I felt I needed to tell her one more important thing. I asked if she knew about Dad's debt. However, it seems my response was, as I suspected, My sister was shocked when I mentioned our father's debt, indicating she had no prior knowledge of it. Our parents had kept the existence of this debt hidden from her. Despite not being wealthy, our family often lived beyond our means, relying heavily on loans to cover expenses, particularly for my sister's needs like ballet lessons and college tuition. I pointed out that since my sister wanted Dad to live comfortably without worries, she should also take responsibility for the debt incurred for her benefit. I sarcastically praised her as a wonderful daughter for not wanting Dad to worry about the debt. My intentional sarcasm infuriated my sister further, and she accused me of mocking her. She continued to believe that I must have secretly used our mother's inheritance to afford the high-end electronics and furniture, despite my explanations. Feeling frustrated, she also criticized my job at an unknown company, implying that I looked down on her job and made fun of it. As my sister continued to berate me, she displayed a clear lack of understanding of my career. She assumed I worked at some unimpressive, unknown company doing a mediocre job. However, I actually work at a financial firm, which is a foreign multinational company. Her confusion about the term foreign indicated her limited knowledge, likely because our family wasn't adept at foreign languages. They often trivialized things they didn't understand or hadn't heard of before. In reality, the company I work for is well known globally, something that anyone with basic general knowledge would recognize. Despite their constant belittling and assumption of my incompetence, I excelled in my studies, particularly in Spanish. I attended college to further my studies in Spanish, and by the time I graduated, I was fluent enough to communicate professionally. My job at the multinational company is demanding but rewarding, allowing me to earn a comfortable salary. Unfortunately, my parents and sister never took an interest in my achievements or cared to understand my capabilities. They had always dismissed me since childhood, assuming I wasn't good at anything without bothering to look closer or be concerned about my grades. While my sister kept yelling and demanding apologies, I saw no reason to apologize or seek forgiveness. There had always been many things about my sister that I never quite understood, dating back to our childhood. After calmly ending the call with my sister and severing ties, I felt a sense of clarity and peace. I no longer wanted to try to understand or seek forgiveness from them. I had been disowned, but I also no longer had any ties to them. I asked my sister not to call me again and then hung up. In the following months, I heard from a local friend that my sister and her husband had returned home, hoping to rely on what they believed was our mother's inheritance. However, things did not go as planned for them. They struggled to find jobs without a car, which was essential for work in our area. As a result, they were unable to repay our father's debt, and life became very challenging. Eventually, they had to sell our family home. My sister, her husband, their children, and my father were forced to move into a nearby apartment complex, facing the consequences of their decisions. Despite the difficulties they faced, I felt a sense of clarity and peace in my own life, free from the toxicity and burdens of my family's expectations and misunderstandings. I focused on my career and personal growth, embracing the sense of freedom that came with cutting ties with those who have disowned me. The sale of our family home didn't fully cover my father's debt, so they are still struggling to repay it. The financial strain, combined with living in a cramped apartment, has taken a toll on their family relationships. My sister's husband, Tom, blames and resents her for squandering their savings and forcing him to quit his job. Their marriage is now at risk of falling apart. The only positive aspect is that the children have made friends and are enjoying their time in the apartment complex. Meanwhile, I moved closer to my office and have been thoroughly enjoying my days. I started spending the money I've earned on myself, something I never prioritized before. It's a new sense of comfort and happiness to focus solely on my job and my own needs. Sitting on my new sofa, admiring my decorated nails, I realize how liberating it is to live a carefree single life without worrying about others. After enduring hardships in a restrictive environment for so long, I am determined to embrace this newfound freedom and enjoy life for myself. I plan to relish this carefree single life and focus on my own happiness for a while.